Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to the game of life. So we played one game, full mode. Let's try fast mode. Let's also add only one CPU and see how quick we can go through a game that way. Wow. Feels like the music is playing on top of the sound effects there. Alright, there we go. What we're looking for is there's like 6 more achievements to get, and we want to, at the very least, we want to get to the third mini game, of which there's only 3 mini games. Although, frankly, unless they were going to throw a lot more mini games in here, which they probably should have, a la Mario Party, you pretty much only need 3 for an hour's amount of time. But that is to say, because they had only 3, they only really space them out enough, so it doesn't feel like that's too few. So I guess at this point, what this boils down to is either you get a free career or you spend 100,000, and this quick game is going to end once you get to the chapel. As far as I can tell, you got no reward for getting married. The game just kind of forces you to get married. That way you can have kids later and not have kids out of wedlock. This is certainly something that you would have wanted to increase. So it does seem like the free careers are different. I also want to keep an eye here on this spot to see if these are cards that we play. I guess it is. These are event cards that you play. So, yeah. Having such a quick game pretty much may limit your ability to get any of the achievements done, frankly. Because one of the achievements is to get like 4 kids, and that's not gonna work. So he took the 100,000 salary instead of the 120,000 salary for some reason. You're only gonna get maybe you're gonna get 2 paychecks before this game is done. And maybe 3 because I skipped the job. I skipped going to college. So in the first full game I played, I felt like the game of life was kind of long and boring and just not simplistic, not complicated enough. If I can say the right word. Now, it feels like we are in the exact opposite scenario where a quick game is just going to be so abrupt that you're not even going to have enough of a satisfaction, enough interaction for it to be a satisfactory game at all. Also, at this point, I think we can go ahead and just turn the music down. I was going to listen to the last recording, but I didn't get around to that. So, honestly, I think you would do better instead of having quick win conditions of making it to the chapel being an option. Which this is basically the shortest experience I think you possibly could have. It should probably be more of a case of the map changes so that you restart at the beginning after it. Right. So there is an achievement for for doing this without being seen. And it seems like you're pretty much gonna take four turns no matter what. So I just got that achievement for winning a game and going the full 10 meters without being seen and sent back. So there's still one mini game we haven't played, and you can't individually practice or play those mini games from the main menu. Straight up win. Story of life, get to the wedding chapel. Alright. So let's try another game real quick, because that was less than 5 minutes. We went from an hour of gameplay to 5 minutes. And in this case, I guess it had nothing to do with your money at all, so this is straight up so oversimplified. It's just big spends. And don't go to the college, because that would hurt you. Let's see. Be the first to reach 750,000. Okay, well that's slightly different. Once again, we'll take the free careers. So we have a mechanic to be number 2 or number 3 for 50,000. That is a pretty low paying job. So I could see why you would want to go to night school and raise that up. You do get this early payout, but the 50K for a low paying job with an early... It's basically making the argument that, well, people that get paid weekly make more money, or feel like they make more money compared to people who are paid monthly because they're on salaries. But the exact opposite is the truth. Like, if you're getting paid weekly, then you're almost certainly an hourly employee who's getting paid very little compared to a salary employee who's getting paid monthly. Teachers in the United States are kind of the worst middle ground of that, where they get paid salaries, but it can be only 9-10 months out of the year. Some schools break up paychecks to cover all 12 months, and teachers aren't paid, frankly, as much as they should be. So unlike other salary jobs where you're paid enough that you're expected to be able to make ends meet and pay your bills over the course of that month, teachers can be kind of cash strong sometimes. Also, teachers in particular end up having to buy a lot of school supplies and pull a whole bunch of shenanigans with taxes to maybe get some reimbursements for buying school supplies for the students. There is this problem on top of the fact that getting married doesn't seem to really reward you any, in the fact that it also seems like your spouse is always just a lazy layabout. They're not costing you any money, but they don't have a job themselves to potentially double your income, which certainly if you were going to adjust the game of life, you would probably want to have a lot more earlier life. There's probably a Game of Life Junior board game out there that would work fairly nicely. But like this kind of seems like you start at 18, 19 years old, and there should probably be some more events earlier in life first. But then you should probably be a bit of a layabout and have more happen in the game before you get to married. And that way the marriage can be the point of doubling your income. Now, there's almost certainly an achievement for winning this without grabbing any of the red ones, which I immediately failed because these controls are terrible. I'm basically just swinging back and forth. I think probably some of the problem here is laser mouses have a tendency to have acceleration built into them. So the faster you move, the faster the character moves, and I don't think this is programmed well enough for that. So I probably didn't get an achievement just then for that. Because I did hit one bill. And I don't know if the amount you collected really directly turned into the amount you brought back from outside that minigame. But yeah, the halfway point should be where you get a, we'll go with a heterosexual couple at this time. And we'll keep an eye to see if any of the other CPUs ever pick homosexual couplings. Yeah, this should be the double point where your spouse should be working the same job basically as you, so they're doubling it. That would be an easy way to run the numbers. And then at the halfway points, everything could be kind of doubled. Or what you could do is have everything play based on the number of pegs in your car. So we just got fired there. Alright, well, we had a bad job anyways. So do we want to be a stunt performer or a police officer? I'll be a stunt performer, I guess. I don't think there's any achievements for doing each of the jobs where you feel like that would be kind of a goal, that you would have this whole kind of checklist of different events that you would want somebody to see to have fully engaged in all the possibilities of this game. And they just didn't do that. They instead went with the let's make the minimum amount of achievements required at for consoles, which I'm sure this was a console game at one time. Although I'm not sure with the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5 if there's really any requirement to have achievements anymore. I think they still kind of try and push it. But I definitely know for the game The Witness that they didn't want any achievements, and so they added like 2 achievements that were actually very, very difficult achievements and felt like something that you actually had to struggle to succeed to get. And you could easily just win the game by doing one of these mini games. Yeah, I only need 60,000 more dollars. You definitely can also see how a digital version of this game need not follow the same rules. There could easily be a mode that just randomly puts characters in different places, or rearranges the paths, or does any number of interactive things that you can't really do with a piece of cardboard. and a spinner. You also have the opportunity, because it's digital now, to potentially cheat a bit and have the computer AIs play very badly or get bad luck on the draw. It would be interesting if you could make your own paths for something like this, but then you'd have to almost integrate something like Carcassonne, I believe is the game I'm thinking of. Or Carcassonne, I don't know how you pronounce it. So night school, let's do night school this time. And then lose 100,000 because of that. You probably lose the game at that point too. 100,000 versus 130,000. The bonus number is not always directly connected to the salary. So now I'm a brain surgeon from a stunt driver. So we go. Get some money. I feel like each of the little steps shouldn't just be green, red, or yellow, too. That they should probably be color-coded. That might be a bit more like a Candyland game, where you move to the next red spot or the next green spot instead of actually counting. And that might be just too childish. He was 10,000 short of winning there. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a spinner that's so colorful and not see it put to more use. Okay. Is there a reason to buy a house? No, so just continue. Not in this game. There's also not a real reason to play these quick games, because it's not like there's an achievement for even playing it multiple times. I think inherently this is kind of the problem with a lot of digital board game transitions. I've seen a lot worse, certainly, things that have been just reviewed awfully or just don't play and are just in incredible low efforts to rip people off, certainly. But you really can't devalue the digital version of a board game. You should be increasing value of on top of what a board game actually is worth. And I feel like the fast games is kind of rushing players potentially to get bored with the game even faster without even requiring them to commit to playing a full game. And it just so abruptly ends there. And we still have yet to see the minigame, and there's no other 3D models. I could see Marmalade Studios certainly waste a lot of time making a whole bunch of different islands. But you certainly could have gone with 4 or 5 different islands and make it feel more like a Mario Party game in that sense. So once again it's 7,500. So let's just restart. Then let's see if we can find some other win conditions. It may be that there are just a lot of win condition cards that get to 750,000, and then there's some others that are landing somewhere else. It's weird you can't set the win conditions though. Get to 1.5 million. What happens if you make it all the way to the end? Hmm. 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 Yeah, there is a complete and total lack of customization in this game. And frankly, there's not a lot to say or criticize at a certain level here. As we keep going, I will more than likely spend maybe an extra hour or two. I still cannot drag the money. Still feel like I should be able to drag the money. Still feel like that should work always. The Wheel of Fortune television show has that same problem where people don't spin the wheel hard enough. Which, frankly, I think they should probably just replace the wheel with a motor. Just stick a motor at the bottom and have them press a button that randomizes the strength. Sure, they want a realistic physical device so people don't think it's rigged, but it still could easily be rigged. It's not that hard, frankly, to program something that could add resistance to a giant wheel and calculate where it's going to land and add resistance to stop it from landing on, say, $1 million tile. And unless there was some government agency actually looking under the wheel of the Wheel of Fortune, that could easily be happening. They could be also cheating in the other direction to have it land on the million more often. But normally they don't have to do that anyways, because they can just manipulate the odds by what the options are, how many bankrupts are. This is definitely... I just lost 50,000. I don't know how. Definitely a case where you could remove the spinner, the plastic spinner. And little gadgets, frankly, are not that expensive. So if you wanted to maintain the value for a cardboard version of the Game of Life, and you put in a custom-made circuit board that spun around and randomly landed on things, you probably are only adding $3 to it, to the cost of the whole thing, when you start buying in bulk. Oh, I keep landing on this guy and going bankrupt because of that. You build a maze, collect 50,000 from the bank. So I've got like a couple bank loans already, and I haven't made it anywhere. Celebrate Great Uncle Max's 100th birthday. Pay $100. I wonder if that's supposed to be Uncle Sam reference. There is also, I think, a point here, since Hasbro has effectively a monopoly on board games. There aren't basically any toy stores in existence nowadays that aren't just being shipped from like Amazon or a toy store section in a grocery store or Walmart. But what you could have is a Hasbro starter set that includes dice and money and counter tokens and things that you would use in any Hasbro game ever. And they could be kind of like booster packs. And that way you could say, well, to play this game in totality, you need the Hasbro starter set, which is $5.99, and then you can buy each of our board games for another $5.99 or even $4.99, and then you might be able to even squeeze out some more money while not breaking people over the coals to have to have little plastic pieces and pegs and things. But yeah, junk stores are constantly overflooded with board games that are missing pieces. Collect $40 from the bank. Actually, me having bank loans probably won't affect anything because the goal here is to just get 1.5 million, so I never have to pay him back anyways. But then that also establishes if this game is supposed to be somewhat of an analogy to real life, this quick end condition is to say pull some kind of Bernie Madoff style scam so you have 1.5 million in your bank, and then it doesn't matter if you get caught, thrown in jail, or bankrupted after that point. Which that's not a good message to potentially send. But yeah, just at one point having a lot of money does not inherently make you successful. I guess at a certain level here, the entire message being sent here though really does reinforce that idea though that success is measured completely here by a financial amount. So yeah, there is no way to win here by being satisfied in your job conditions or with the number of kids you want or anything like that, where you could certainly add that as an element. At the very beginning of the game, you could say, I'm going to make a sealed envelope prediction here of what I want to be when at the end of the game, and it could be something as simple as saying, I want to have this job amongst all the jobs that are available. I want to have this number of kids, and I want to have a house worth this much, or a total value worth this much. But you'd almost have to set an over-under rule there, because it would be too easy to say, well, I want 0 kids and whatever random job, and we'll just toggle back and forth, I guess. I wish you could skip these animations. I bet anybody who really liked this game probably would want that too. At the very least, have a skip button. Here I'm clicking, nothing's happening. They're not super long animations by any means, but yeah. Oh, I guess when you get married, you do get the wedding gift. So there is that small upfront reward where the kids' rewards are at the end of the game. You seem to go through quite the collection of cars where now in modern days it would probably be very silly to cycle through so many cars or have any cars at all unless they were electric. The implication that everybody starts off with a moped is pretty ridiculous, and then they move to a convertible 2-seater, and then they move to a like 6-seater family van or sedan. I'll try this again. I think the achievement is probably to win and not hit anything, and we'll try as subtle movements as possible. Gotta move out of the way though. That's the part. Nope, missed one. I don't even know if the purples are the good ones or if the golds are the good ones. There's one definitely that's red that is good too. So am I now gonna get 100K? Because I collected 100K after the... Yeah, I got exactly 100K. I guess there are no trucks in this universe either. Yeah, that's certainly another thing you could have varied up here, is to have more cars, more variety in general. I really feel like any digital version of a board game should put a real world version of a board game to shame, and with just the amount of polish and visuals here. And in part, that's why I feel like the spin-off Clue games that were made in the 80s are probably the best Clue games, because it's not playing Clue at all. It's just a kind of story adventure, point and click adventure type game that you play with the characters from Clue. And arguably, we've seen some attempts to turn board games into movies over the past decade, and I would suggest that Battleship is probably one of the best translations of a board game to a movie, in the sense that they completely mostly ignored everything about the simplistic game Battleship and just made a submarine movie and put a recognizable name on it. Compared to something like Pixels, where there was lots of video game references and perhaps some accuracy there, but not a good movie. Or even, what is it? What is it I'm thinking about? There's a Disney movie, 2 of them actually. I know the main protagonist was called Fix-It Felix in this movie, but that wasn't the name of it. You're basically gonna win here if you can just tap the mouse button faster than the CPU, which you will do. Well, regardless of the fact I can't remember the name of the Disney movie, there was a Disney movie that was based on characters inside of a video game, and that was full of video game references and such, but that really didn't feel like a video game as a movie. It just felt like a Disney movie. And I'm somewhat confusing the issues, certainly, because there hasn't been, I think, any Disney movies based on board games. Although, there kind of could be. There have been video games of role-playing games, like Bloodlines Masquerade, and things like that, but that's slightly different too. The original Fallout 1 and 2 are basically role-playing games, board games that are done in a digital format. And see, that might be where it is best implemented, is when you do have something like the Dungeons and Dragons getting turned into something like Skyrim, or at least being Skyrim heavily being influenced by Dungeons and Dragons, or you have something super complicated like Hero's Quest. There hasn't been a really great, well-known video game from Hero's Quest, but there should have been. The Warhammer series has tried multiple times to be a good running series of video games, and failed multiple times over and over again, which is a shame, because I think there is enough fandom and enough story there for there to be a good Warhammer series. It's just the people in charge, I don't think, are quite competent enough at video game development. And maybe it is just a case that the Warhammer series in particular is just really, really too complicated. Which inherently, I guess that just paints the picture as it is, that there has both been a situation where simplistic board games like this have been done cheaply and badly, or at least mediocrely, to make video games, and then the more complicated games have been done cheaply and mediocrely. So you never catch a break. And some of that, I think, probably comes from a culture divide. I think board game players in general, there's a high enough percentage of them that don't play video games and kind of hate the video game audience. I think the same could easily be said for like comic book readers, people or play collectible card games. Each of those nerd genres may have a decent amount of overlap, but then there is also a decent amount of people that says, no, this one thing is the only thing I do, and I have nothing but disdain for people who do different things. Like, and I guess the question is, why can't we all get along? But that would never happen, so seems like you might be able to jump the gun a little bit. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a decent percentage of people who would play even these simplistic board games, and either they're amongst a group of people that don't watch TV and they're playing it with their little kids and they don't play video games and they don't have a computer, and so this is the simplistic, non-electrical way of entertaining people. And then I bet there are some hardcore board game fans that have hundreds of board games and an entire closet full of them, if not more, that also don't play video games. And then there's, I would say, maybe 70% of everybody else left in between. See, I don't know why he'd buy a house. He's totally gonna lose at that, right? If I could just get one more kid and make it all the way to the end, I think I'd get another achievement. Let's see. And I'm not really reading any of these cards. Feels like you could have paid a voice actor or a voice actress to read out all these cards. Pick an opponent, both tell everyone what your speech is about. Bank pays the highest to the spinner. Seems like some of these cards might be more around social interaction than anything else. Which frankly, for something called the game of life, I'm surprised these cards don't ask you to make moral decisions or tell a story more. Because you could easily have had a game where you draw a card and it says you find a stray dog. Do you adopt it, or do you send it to the kennel, or ignore it? And then you spin, and the spin gives a payout not really relating to that writing prompt or that talking prompt. But, like, a lot of board games are sometimes used for getting to know people. There's plenty of adult board games out there to get to know potential mates and flirt with. But you could certainly take that same idea and apply it to a regular game. Let's take the safe route. I don't know why you wouldn't take the safe route. It seems like when you hit these exclamation points, though, you always stop. So the game is intentionally forcing you, I think, into not getting too far ahead. That would make a lot of sense considering how getting to the end seems to be quite an advantage. Plus, if you got to the end at 5 turns ahead of another player, then that would be very boring. There's definitely no real mystery and very little in the way of surprises for this game. I feel like you should probably have a negative number here where you go back, or you could choose to go left or right or back or forward. But I guess you couldn't really do that because you could go back and forward over one of these paydays over and over again. Alright, and we won. Alright, so we've seen 3 endings. We've still not yet seen the 3rd mini game. I didn't make it to the end of 4 kids, so I didn't get that achievement. But there's basically nothing new that they're showing me. Feels like some of these mini games should be also in different places. Some of these buildings make sense, but this pool doesn't get used. This front of the hospital is just dead space. The stream is not used. Let's see. The whole background section here is not used. Over here is not used. The whole skiing mountain where there could easily have been a ski loft. Yeah, that's not used either. This is a lot of dead visuals. So 150,000. Again, let's restart and try one more time. Apparently there's a whole secret waterfall on the backside of the mountain that you don't even get to see except for in that fly around. You can't twist the map and rotate it. So, wedding chapel. Man, it feels like maybe there's only 4 or 5 options. As far as fast win conditions. So, in all fairness, I think it is worth mentioning that there probably aren't too many people that are going to play this game like I'm playing it, where I'm playing it back to back over the course of just an hour or two in one day. But yeah, this, much like a real world board game, this game is going to end up in my Steam library and I'll just almost certainly forget about it and probably never play it again after I get all the achievements. And I don't even know why I'm caring about the achievements, since Steam achievements don't even mean anything. anyways. Let's see, if we go here, let's see, we can drag, but we can't rotate. And a lot of these icons, like you can't really zoom in on them. You can't hover over them and give you a text prompt. So here's the waterfall you can't see, except for during the spin. It would have made a lot of sense to me if there was a mini game here and it zoomed out and then zoomed into that mini game, and then there's a mini game here and it zoomed out to that, and then potentially a mini game here, or here there's just dead space, or a mini game here, or here. You have this boat in the back that does nothing. You have the bridge that really doesn't do anything. You have these kind of desert island pontoons. I think those are called pontoons. Could have been a mini game here too. Interesting that there's a transition after that to recenter your images. I'm a little surprised this game is rated positively on Steam, but at the end of the day it delivers, and I guess the previous version of the Game of Life was so bad and poorly received that they're happy to even have anything that works, and that's all you really wanted, was for Steam gamers is to have these games in some form or fashion on Steam, for the rare occasion that they might want to play it digitally. Also, I imagine, though, you run into the problem now with something like Tabletop Simulator, which whenever I get around to actually buying Tabletop Simulator, I probably will end up covering that and then never buying another board game. There is a customization to having something like this compared to Tabletop Simulator that makes it look prettier, certainly, but there's not really enough polish for that to be a big sales point, because what the things that are missing here are so blatantly obvious, and the polish that's missing is so blatantly obvious. They should have been at minimum 9 mini games. There should have been multiple sound music files, background songs. There should be tweaks on a lot of the sound effects, because a lot of them can get repetitive and annoying. There's all kinds of interface problems in the fact that it doesn't have controller support at all, which is kind of annoying, because if this was going to be a pass and play game, it would be nice if you could plug in at least 2 controllers into a PC and have them be detected by software. I think the latest updates to Windows 10 and Steam is starting to even recognize having up to 4 or 6 controllers plugged in at the same time, which, yeah, that is nice and kind of late to the party. You would have kind of assumed that you could, for at least some games, have multiple controllers plugged in, but it doesn't come up that much. But it is always a little awkward when you have one person potentially playing with a keyboard, one person playing with a mouse, one person playing with a controller, and then you're still having to pass things around. And I just lost, unless he rolls a 1. One of the things I would say that is fairly obvious in the difference between, say, Solitaire, in which there's probably 120,000 different variations of Solitaire, because everybody had a a deck of cards and everybody wanted to create their own rules, and that created a decent, at least dozen or so good games of solitaire you can play with cards, on top of other games like poker, which you play against other people. Um, there's some timeliness to those games, or snooker or billiards. Like there's multiple different games of billiards, there's multiple different games of darts. Having very basic pieces and having them stay around and be playable works very well. Whereas games like the Game of Life, board games, are so customized that maybe you can make some house rules, but you couldn't really play them on the digital version. There's no house rules options. In fact, there's only fast mode and full mode as options, with no other changes. And then online, let's see. Yeah, fast mode and full mode online too, so you can't make your custom game there either. I could definitely see the idea of potentially having house rules with the Game of Life, but it would be very hard with the pieces that they provided. You could say something like every time you run an odd number, you go back that many spaces. Every time you do an even number, you go forward that many spaces. I think that would potentially make the game run probably too long. They could definitely have had more variety in the cards. The digital version could definitely have had more mini games. That won't be in the board game. Although I guess in the Game of Life board game, you could have a card that says do some kind of arm wrestling or Rochambeau or something like that outside of the game. There was nothing stopping you from having a rule like that, but that seems kind of silly. Particularly, you don't probably want people to stand up from the table where the board game is playing, because people might just walk away and never come back. So, yeah. This is going to be my series for the Game of Life. I may play it off screen a couple times to get the achievements, just because I'm an obsessive OCD collector of achievements. Otherwise, I probably will never play it again. It is the Game of Life. I don't think the Game of Life is the best board game in the first place. I am not familiar enough with the actual board game, so if there was some major differences, I've completely missed that. But yeah, it's not terrible as a digital version. It's not great. I really wish Steam would sell mobile, Android, and iOS games, or at the very least give you free copies of mobile, Android, iOS versions of games, because this is a great example of something where I would feel like I was due a free copy of this on the cell phone platforms and tablet platforms that it supports, instead of potentially having to buy it a second time, because there was not a lot of reward for purchasing this on Steam. Anyways, that's going to be it for this series. A short one, just 2 episodes. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.